All right, good. So today we're going to look at 4 poems. And the way I'm going to do this is a little different than usual. I'm not going to be the only one lecturing, right? Today we're going to work on these poems together. The reason is this, right? When a poet writes, it's often not to give us information. I don't know if you guys realize the difference between poetry and prose, right? Prose, when you're writing just a narrative or when you're writing, facts, this is to give information. Poetry is not there primordially to give information. Poetry is there to awaken something in each one of us. So the goal of the poet is not to give you information, is to awaken knowledge that you already have, right? This is the same idea as in Plato, right? That we have wisdom within. We are all wise, right? Potentially, and all we need is to be awakened to those treasures within, right? So the poet is there to simply awaken. And so what I want to do today is go over these 4 poems together. I'm going to read a line and I'm going to ask you, what does this line awaken in you? What wisdom does this line awaken in you, and can you share, right? What is the wisdom that is being disclosed in you by this particular line? What is the wisdom you're getting from this line, right? Okay, so today I will really rely on you. So I'm counting on you. Let me see the gallery view. So put your hand in the screen. Can I count on you to help me with the interpretation of these texts? Okay, and then I need to see a bunch of faces. So Suleimanov, Souvenance, gosh, I need to learn these names. Kushmakov, Karabakov, are you there? I see darkness. Let's see, Pierre. Okay, I see most of you. Okay, great. Okay, Kushmakov, please. Thank you. Kushmakova, sorry. Pierre, are you there? I see Celia in the darkness.
Yes, I'm here, Professor. I'm on a different laptop right now. This one doesn't have a working camera.
All
I apologize.
All right, no worries. Okay, y'all look good. Okay, can I see your hands that you're going to help me today in my in our interpretation? Okay, very good. I'm going to be relying heavily on you. Okay, I see a question by Garcia. Garcia.
Oh, I just wanted to say that, can you give me a second to fix the camera? I just need like maybe 3 minutes because my computer's giving me a hard time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good. All right, so let's begin with the first poem, which is King Dressed as a Servant. So what page is that on? Can someone tell me? Oh, here it is, page 36. Okay. All right, so I'm going to read, and then I'm going to just open the floor for how you understand this particular sentence. So it starts with the amazing title, A King Dressed as a Servant. So already here, if you're from a Christian background, right, you should be able to immediately connect this, right? Can anyone tell me just the title? So still looking at the poem in the sense of a mystical poem to God, right? Before we get into the love parts for us, what does it mean? What does Rumi mean? And I think if you're from a Christian background, you'll get this immediately. Remember, Sufism is influenced by Christianity. What does it mean, a king dressed as a servant? Who is the king? Let's see if I can get some interpretations. Who is the king in Rumi's poems? Garcia, go ahead.
I thought of the king as Jesus Christ within Christianity. Maybe it's a servant.
Yeah, exactly. So the king is God, right? And the dressed as a servant, right? This is reminiscent of the Christian view that God kind of put on the garb of poverty, put on the garb of humanity in order to get very close to us, right? And so the Sufism is taking this idea again. It finds that this idea is an interesting idea and says likewise, right? God dresses as a servant to be able to speak to us, right? He will hide in the mundane in order to reach us. And we have many stories in Sufism about, old beggars or, who happen to be God, right? And so we ought to pay attention to these mundane things, to these forgotten beings who are usually kind of on the sidelines, because there is God, right? Hiding in order to talk to us, right? So a king dressed as a servant is the idea that God often hides in unusual places, right? In the face of a beggar or in the face of a child, right? Even an animal, right? Sometimes can speak the words of God to us, right? So that's an idea which, of course, was highly developed in Christianity and taken over again here by Sufism. Okay, so and we'll talk about how often as lovers, right? If you love someone, you often have to dress as a servant in order to reach your beloved. Sometimes you have to, actually, let me throw that question to you. What does it mean as a lover to dress as a servant in order to reach your beloved? I'm curious. Well, what can some of you say about that? These are difficult ideas. They're easy to read and hard to do, to put into practice. Sanchez, you need to learn to raise your virtual hand because I can't always see you. But go ahead.
There you go. You said, what does it mean for a lover to act as a servant, right? Or to dress as a servant?
Yeah.
So I think that means like well, I already know my prior knowledge, like different acts of love. So like the act of service, so it's like to show your love for your partner through like, I don't know, like cleaning up for them or hanging their coats or serving them food, things like that. So it's like a more intimate type of love that's like physical almost, but through like small little things.
Very nicely put, right? There's
yeah.
a way to express love in the mundane, right? Love is not
Right.
just poetry, it's not just flowers, it's also acts of service, right? Acts of sacrifice, right? So very often, right, we are invited as kings and queens, right, as lovers to put on the garb of a servant in order to reach our beloved. Sometimes this is the only way to reach the heart, right, of our beloved. Very nice. Okay, so I'm anticipating on some of these ideas. So let's go back now. I'm going to read the beginning of that poem on page 36. Everybody's with me. Let me check the gallery. Put your hand on the screen if you're with me. A sweet voice calls out. Wave at me. Okay, good. All right. Okay, a sweet voice calls out, the caravan from Egypt is here, 100 camels with amazing treasure, midnight, a candle, and someone quietly waking me, your friend has come. Okay, so here's my first question. So the friend, of course, who's a friend? Let's remind ourselves, who's the friend in Rumi's poetry? Donaldson?
I think he's talking about God when he's referring to the friend.
Okay, very good, right? The friend is always God, and in our case, the friend is going to be our beloved, right? Okay, so midnight, why is it? So here's my first question. Why is it that the friend or the beloved, right, the love of our lives, why do they come at midnight? What is the significance of midnight? Why can't they come in the morning when we're ready? Or why can't they come at noon, right? Why can't they come, in the early evening when we're still awake? Why midnight? Okay, so let me hear you guys a little bit. I want to hear several of you with this interpretation of midnight. What does midnight mean? And why is it the best time for love to come to us? All right, I am listening. Let me see your virtual hands. Okay, Sanchez, you're first. Go ahead.
I kind of pieced it together from the silence. I think it's in the last one, and no expectations on page 77. So I guess I'm kind of reaching here, but I feel like midnight is a representation of like the nothingness. Like it's all quiet and it's silent. There's no obstruction of your judgment or what you're trying to show or express. Like if it were in the light, your perception would get in the way. It's kind of through conditions and different means of like you're ordering your reality, like it's your own subjective reality. So without those things in the way, it's more unconditional, and it's expansive, I guess you could say.
Okay, great, I like that. So in other words, midnight is the time where you don't see clearly, right? So it's also the time
love is blind.
Exactly.
That's what I was connecting with as well.
It's the time of no judgment, is the time we'll see in a poem, no expectations, right? You are not in control of what is going to happen, what is going to appear, how it's going to appear, who is going to be the lover. So I like that very much. Okay, so you guys can write this down, right? Let's put this in our notes. This is a good thought, right? That love comes when we lay aside our preconceptions, right? When we lay aside our expectations, when we lay aside our judgments of how love should look like, of how our beloved should look like, right? Very often, right? Night is the time when we don't see clearly. We don't know, right? It's the time when we decide, I don't know who's gonna come and how they're going to come, but I'm open. I don't have any fixed agenda as to what my beloved needs to look like. I don't have a list of what they need to be for me to recognize them, right? I'm going to be blind, right? A blind date with destiny. Okay, I like that very much. Thank you, Sanchez. Okay, Rudolph, go ahead.
Zaik than I am. I had a guilty conscience, and I was thinking of Revelations, the book of Revelations, where it says that God comes in the darkest hour between the night and the day.
Nice.
as it is human nature very often to wait until the darkest hour, until we start praying to a God or starting to believe.
Excellent. So I love the way you connect it also to God's love, right? Anything we're going to say today applies, by the way, to the love between God and us. So just like we lose our conceptions when we're waiting for a human lover, we also have to lose our conceptions, our judgments, our expectations when we're waiting for God, right? And likewise, I like what you're saying, God comes in the darkest hour, right? It's when we lose our capacity to control. When we give up, when we surrender, this is when finally God will come. When we're not trying to, on our own, to make things work, when we just, when we hit a wall and we're like, okay, I can't do this, help. And then God comes. And likewise, by the way, with the human lover, right? When we stop trying to make it happen, right? When we stop trying to force it, when we kind of just surrender and open ourselves to what chooses to come our way, this is also midnight, right? So second point you guys can write, right, based on what Rudolph said, is that it's also, midnight is also the time where the strivings cease, where the efforts stop, where you have worked hard to make it happen. You've gone to all kinds of parties, you're on 5 dating apps, you're trying to date every weekend somebody new. And at one point you're like, you know what, this isn't working, I give up. This is when they will come, right? That moment when you're like, you know what, screw this, I'm done with this, I'm just gonna relax, enjoy my life. That is the moment when you stop trying to make it happen. Love is not something you can make happen. Love is something that comes your way when you stop trying. Now, doesn't mean you sit, and play video games all day, right? Doesn't mean you do that. You can still put in the effort, but you do it in a relaxed way. You do it in a playful way. Let me see what happens, right? I'm not trying to make it happen. I'm putting myself out there, but in a playful way, to just, I'm curious what's going to happen. I know I cannot control it. So really opening ourselves up to love as a grace, not something that comes to us, not something that we can force or make happen, right? Very nicely put. I like very much your two interpretations. Anything else about midnight? I would add, personally, midnight is the moment of stillness, right? Just to add to what Rudolph is saying, until you found stillness in your life, there's no room, right, for another person. We have to get to a place of peace with ourselves, with the people around us. And once we are on that place of peace and of stillness, this is when love can start pouring in, right? It's not going to come as long as you're fighting with everybody and fighting with yourself, right? There is an inner peace you have to get before finding love. I know most of us are like, I'll find peace when I have love, right? No, you have to find it before, because that is the conditions of possibility. This is the best climate, right, for love to come into our lives. So very nice. I like that a lot. Okay, so let's continue. Here's a poem the part that I really like and that we'll come back to. So I want you to take note of it. We'll come back to it when we do Kierkegaard. An ocean, right? Suddenly there's a world within this world, an ocean inside the water jar. So I want to ponder that a little bit, this idea of an ocean in a water jar. What does this tell us about love, about ourselves, or about the beloved, or about God? What can we learn from this very interesting image that an ocean can be contained in a water jar? What can we get from that image? Okay, Sanchez, go ahead.
I see kind of like, I envision this vast thing, like kind of like the universe, and we're taking it all in. And like, just like how the universe is this connection through all the galaxy and, the stars and everything, it's just as expansive how love is. So it's this vast thing, but it's all inside of you. Feel it inside your body, but it's expressed in in a vast way to, and it can be shared for all things.
Okay, nicely put. I like the way you call love something, you connect love to expansiveness, right? One thing that I learned on my love journey is that love will expand your consciousness. Love will expand your heart. And if you're not ready to expand, you're not ready for love. You have to expand your mind and your heart when you are in love. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So there's this, I love the way you're saying love is like this ocean, this expansiveness that I need to achieve within myself, right? Okay, nice. Anybody else want to add to the ocean in the water jar? What can this tell us about the way we see our beloveds? How can we see our beloveds as a jar containing the ocean? Anybody have any ideas? We'll come back to that idea with Kierkegaard, but I want to see if anyone gets it. So you love someone, and the sign that you love them is that you're able to see the ocean in the water jar. What does this mean? And by the way, this is another Christian image, right? This is an image which you find in the letters of Paul, where he says he's talking about the presence of God, right? Or the presence of the divine light, the divine presence. And he says this about it. He says, we have this treasure, the divine presence, in jars of clay, right? So he's saying we, jars of clay, human beings of clay, fragile human beings, are capable of containing this divine infinity, right? So this is really certainly an image that is taken from those, or is connected here again to Christianity. But going back to love, anybody see any way that we can look at our lover or our beloved, and instead of seeing a water jar, we see the ocean? What does that mean? Rudolph, go ahead.
I don't see it necessarily as a limitation of infinity, as in humans not being able to understand infinity, but our lover being able to encapsulate our own ability to look within us for the vastness and infinity of a relationship. There's always something new to find out. There are endless means to make this a wonderful experience, and we should not get lost in what Damien's called the vastness or infinity earlier, but look at it perhaps as a blessing that with the help of our lover, we can actually identify what salvation will be.
Oh, I like that. I like that the love story is an ocean in a water jar, meaning in the relationship, there's constantly new things we can explore, new things we can build or create, right? There should never be a dead end in a relationship. If there's a dead end, it shows a complete lack of imagination. You're not seeing all the possibilities for renewal, for rebirth that lie there in the relationship. I like that a lot. Let's see. Anybody else want to talk about the ocean in the water jar? Okay, I won't anticipate. We'll come back to this quote when we talk about Kierkegaard, and you're going to see a very beautiful interpretation of this particular quote. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna move to the next one. There's just one little line I want to talk about towards the end that let me keep opening this moment like a dead body reviving. I want to talk a little bit about death in the context of Sufism, so you understand the other metaphors that we will see in a bit. So death in Sufism, again, very close to Christianity. Death is simply a stage towards rebirth, right? Death is not final in the context of Sufism. There is a finality in death in, for example, Judaism has, not all of Judaism, but some of it sees death as very final, right? Christianity has kind of opened that, right? Opened that horizon with, of course, the death of Christ who resurrects, right? So we have the same idea here that death in love is never final. Death is always the prelude to a rebirth. And this is also a very profound idea, right? That even when your love dies, this is not the end. It could be the beginning of a rebirth. And I want to emphasize that because very often when love dies, this is the time we think we should split, right? And we don't realize that the death is perhaps the beginning of a new stage, of a new season, of a new year, of a new level, right? That you cannot get to the next level in love if you don't die first, right? And so we will be called throughout our journey with our beloved to go through several deaths, right? Death of the ego, death of the pride, death of our expectations, death of our vision, right? In order to allow for the relationship to be reborn, right? And ourselves alongside with it. So very powerful idea here in Sufism, that death, actually, any type of death that you go through, whether it's the death of your feelings, the death of your love, the death of your relationship, can actually be the prelude to a rebirth, right? And often we miss it because we take the death too seriously. We're like, it's dead. It's over, right? Let's just move on. We don't see, no, death is just it's a door. It's a door onto the next level, onto the next stage, if we allow ourselves to die. Do you remember the Song of Songs? How both lovers allowed themselves to die in the crucible, right, of love. They allowed themselves to change. They allowed themselves to they humble themselves, right, to change and, you know, overcome some of their ego in order to go to the next level, right? Sanchez, some words.
Sorry, I was just gonna say there's a lot of wisdom to take in there. I was gonna ask you to slow down a bit. I'm thinking about it all in my head, like, whoa, yes, the ego and then the different things, attachments and your habits and all, and just kind of like, I guess, playing it in my head right now. Sorry, I have ADHD, so kind of, you know, with these deep things that I'm always doing research on the side, it's kind of like making me remember of, you know, things I usually do. But yeah, it's just
Okay,
a
so
lot.
to summarize for you, death is always a prelude to a resurrection in the context of
Yeah.
and
Yes.
likewise, our love stories can go through the same process.
Yeah.
Good. Moving on to the next poem. I want to go to A Sprig of a Nerve, which is, I never know the pages. Can someone tell me which page this is? Just speak up if you know, because I'm over here turning my pages desperately. What's that? Are you all done?
46.
Thank you. There it is. Okay, good. All right, A Sprig of a Nerve. Okay, so here's a quote that can just dismantle our whole project here. Learned theologians do not teach love. Okay, so first of all, just know this, you can't learn this from an expert. Drop all the books you bought from Barnes and Nobles about 6 steps, you know, to pleasing your lovers, 7 steps to, you know, catching your man, right? Nobody can teach you. Who can teach you then? Who is the best teacher? Who is the best teacher for you? Tell me. If I am the learned theologian. You just said you can't teach love. Okay, so Garcia, tell me.
Is it ourselves?
You think we can learn love from ourselves?
I mean, sorry, our own relationships with other people as we grow, we learn.
So say that again. Sorry, I couldn't hear very well.
Our own relationships with other people as we
Yes,
grow.
your
we learn.
lover. Your lover is your best teacher. Now, the problem is that we don't learn from them because we are so, how shall I put it? It's so difficult to hear from our lover that we're doing something wrong, right? And yet, if we were able to attune ourselves, right, to what they desire from us, we would become experts. Let me tell you, the key to expertise, the key to become a masterful lover is how attuned are you to your beloved's words, to your beloved's requests, to your beloved's desires, right? There's so much, and we don't learn, right, from our beloved. Anybody but them, because it hits very close, right? It hits very deeply, but they are the best teachers, right? Suleimanov, can you add?
Yeah, I'll just add on a little bit because you pretty much said kind of what I was gonna say, but like also like to be like masterful, I think you have to like make your own mistakes throughout the
Yes.
journey. You know, if you're of course in a committed like relationship, you want to, you know, of course you want to like try not to make mistakes, but any mistake that you do make or anything that causes your other partners to like lose interest, you learn from it, you take it on for the future.
Excellent, right? And this goes back to what Garcia was saying, right? We ourselves, we know through our mistakes, we know, right? And in fact, by the way, we are so, what's the word? We are so hard on ourselves when we make a mistake, right? I want us to compare learning to love, like learning to play an instrument. How many of you had to go through this to learn to play an instrument? Anybody put your hand in the screen if you've been through that. Okay, so a few of you. So when you started to play your instrument, how good did you sound? And was everyone really angry at you for sounding that bad, or were they understanding that, well, you know, they have to make mistakes in order to learn, right? So just like with an instrument, right? Of course, we're going to make mistakes. I play violin, so that's why I'm doing this, right? Of course, you're going to make mistakes, and you can't be hard on yourself for making mistakes because that's how we learn, right? That is how we learn. So anytime you've blundered in love or messed things up, right? Celebrate that moment. Celebrate that moment as an opportunity. Ooh, what can I learn? How can I become a better lover, right? So very good. Nicely put. I like that. Okay, good. Continuing. Now, this is actually a sentence which I used to read and kind of gloss over. I would skip it. But then one day it hit me how profound that sentence actually was. It's the next sentence. Love is nothing but gladness and kindness. So I want to stop on that because this is actually a very profound moment. And the reason is this. I used to read this and think that gladness and kindness were feelings. Oh, when you're in love, you feel happy and you feel kind. All right. It's true, right? When you're first in love, right? In the first bloom of love, you're happy, it's natural, you're glad, and then you're kind. And I'm like, I don't like this. This is silly. But then I realized something deeper. kindness and gladness are not feelings, they're virtues. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean when I say that gladness and kindness are more than feelings? They're also virtues that we need to cultivate and put into action. So what do I mean by that? And why is it sometimes so hard to cultivate gladness and kindness in the context of love? So yes, Rudolph, go ahead.
I have to admit that I saw it differently, actually. I'm sorry to hear that you glossed over it, because gladness in itself is very difficult to achieve. It means gratitude for things that occur around you, by others, for you. And generally, and I'm the biggest offender when it comes to this, in my younger years, I was not capable of receiving these gifts and turning them into a virtue, looking at them as something that was done for me, in the service of me, and it didn't necessarily turn into my reciprocal kindness towards the others. But the two of them go together really tightly, and they're the interplay and one of the most magnanimous gifts in a relationship.
Yeah, very good. I really appreciate that, because I have the same problem with receiving, right? So this is something, right? It is actually, let's start with the gladness, right? Gladness as a form of gratefulness for what is being given to you, right? And so there's two ways to see this, right? First of all, we are ungrateful because the beloved is not giving us X, Y, and Z. That's first way we mess this up. We focus on what they're not giving us, instead of seeing everything they're giving us, right? And so we're not practicing gladness. The second way is what you were saying, Rudolph, and I have the same issue. Your beloved gives you something, and you're like, what? What's this? You know what I once did? Someone gave me perfume, and I Googled it to see the price. That's horrible. I'm such a bitch. And and it was like 25 bucks. And I was like, are you kidding me? Why am I worth 25 bucks to you? So I was like, I never wore that damn perfume. And we broke up shortly after. So instead, right, what I could have done, right, is been like, realize that perfume actually meant a lot. Actually, the man told me later that perfume was his favorite scent when he was in high school, and he was kind of honoring me with that, and he was, for him, it was as though he was bestowing kind of, the gift of one, like, you're the one, I mean, I did not get any of that. I just got the price. I was like, how dare you buy me cheap perfume, right? So we often miss the intention of the lover. Right, the intention of this man was really to show me, you're the one for me. I want to bestow this scent that I love upon you. And I immediately interpreted it different and refused the gift, thinking, who cares, right? I don't like this perfume, period. I didn't realize I was also refusing him and rejecting him by rejecting the gift, right? And this is something I think maybe for men is hard, for women is sometimes even harder. Right. And we tend to, we refuse the gift thinking it's just the gift, but we don't realize we are thereby refusing the giver, rejecting the giver. Right. So very important to really receive what the beloved is giving us, even if it doesn't fit what we want, what we expected. Right. There's so many, we women are so difficult. Right. We have this vision, for example, for Valentine's Day, and then the guy gives us this and we get pissed that it wasn't that, right? Instead of simply being grateful for this, right? So there's many ways we mess things up like this, and in a way reject our beloved and push them further into the close, right? Being close to us. So gratitude, right, as a way to express love, right? Receiving as a way to express love, not just giving. I want to emphasize that, right? Because especially as women, we think that giving is the way that we express love best, right? So I hope you ladies are listening. I'm going to say something really important that I realized very late. So I want to see my ladies. Are you there? Wave at me, ladies. Okay, great. I see one or two ladies. Anderson, Kushmakova. Okay, my ladies, yes, good. Okay, so hold on, men. I'm going to get back to you in a bit, right? There's what we often don't realize as women is that we think that to love a man best is to give. Right. And so we give them our time, we do the dishes for them, we cook for them, we drive them around, we do all kinds of things. Right. And in a way, yes, it's nice. Right. But really what the men love is to be received by us. Right. The best way you can show love to a man is not by being his mother, by doing all these things for him, is by, in a way, encouraging him to give to you, inspiring him to give to you, by being good receivers, right? One of the best, the most highest forms of love, highest ways that a man feels loved by a woman is when he feels that she receives him, that she accepts him, that she honors him, that she is grateful for what he has to give her, right? And this, in a way, will incite the man to give more, right? For those ladies in the class who are, you know, pining away because the man is not paying attention to them, take a look at what kind of receiver you have been, right? And ask yourself, am I a good receiver? Because in as much as you're a good receiver, that man will be a good giver, right? So that's just a little footnote for ladies in the class, a little bit of private coaching, right? Back to kindness now. Now, this is another hard one, because it's easy to be kind when everything is going well. But when you just caught them being unfaithful, or you just caught them, or you're on the verge of a breakup, it's very hard to be kind, right? So there's here some lesson in the sense of love is who you are. It's not in response to the environment, right? Love is who you are. You choose to love in that difficult situation, not because they deserve it, because that's who you are. Make sure you write this down. This is very important with regards to kindness, right? Kindness should be your personality, should be your value, should be who you are inherently. It should not be in response to somebody, right? Whatever people are doing, you are yourself, you ought to respond in a kind way because that's who you are, not because that's what they deserve, right? And so when you catch them doing something, or when it's the time for a breakup and you want to be petty, right? You want to be petty and mean, right? This is the moment to curb yourself and tell yourself, no, I'm going to love consistently, right? Because that's who I am, not because that's what they deserve, right? So there's some value there too. So actually this very, very easy sentence, love is nothing but gladness and kindness, one of the most hard things to do in a relationship. Okay, I want to skip now to the next part and hear a little more of you. I love this one. Do not try to be the shepherd, become the flock. All right, what does this mean? Let me hear you on that. Noble, go ahead.
I think he's saying don't try to take the lead, instead try to like be led or like follow when you're being told what to do.
Okay, so what does that look like? That doesn't sound very feminist, right? What does it look like, for example, for you? What would it look like to follow? And how would that be? Can you do it in a way without becoming, you know, I don't know, subservient? Tell me a little bit. How does that look? Help me.
For me personally?
Yep,
or,
you.
It would be if somebody tells me that I should read more books, instead of being like, what do you mean I should read more books? Or like just take their advice and be like, oh, what book should I read? Yeah.
Okay, so another instance of good receiving, right? Your beloved tells you something that they wish you would do. And instead of being like, what? I'm fine. I read enough books as it is, right? You'll be like, you receive the input, you receive the wisdom, you receive the orientation. So, right, this is one very nice way, Noble, of right, letting the lover be your teacher, right? So I like that. So he's the shepherd. So I like that. So maybe you guys can write this down, right? That the lover as a shepherd, right? To make your lover as a shepherd in a ways to lean on them to teach you the way, right? If you don't know the way to love, your lover will teach you, right? They will tell you, here, this would be nice, and you could do this, and I enjoy that, and so forth. And this is wonderful if it's not just the man or the woman, right? Whoever, both are doing this, right? The man is learning from the woman, and the woman is learning from the man, right? And there's so much we could become such experts, right? If as women we could listen to the men in our lives, and as men we could listen to the women in our lives, right? I like that. Thank you. Rudolph.
Not only have I learned to listen to my wife, I also look at being part of the flock as being open to anything that's around me. It's not necessarily only the guidance by the shepherd or the direction the shepherd gives me. It is all the things that happen in a flock, the interaction with others, the interaction of others with the shepherd, the interaction of the shepherd with the others, and the grass we're standing on. So this is kind of a global outlook, a very not self-centered, but a very pluralistic view of the world, giving you a lot of clues how you can be. All the answers are there if you're receptive enough to see and listen and smell and taste and feel.
I like that a lot. I actually had a similar experience where I was puzzled about a relationship I was in, and I was trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? I know I'm doing something wrong. Of course, they're doing a whole lot of stuff wrong, but I must have something wrong too. So, I mean, of course, they're doing 75% of the problem, but I must be 25%. So what am I couldn't see it. And I remember I was in Barnes and Nobles, which I kind of take as a sort of temple where I'm going to hear some guidance. I'm walking in the aisles of Barnes and Nobles, hoping to fall on something. And I swear to God, I stumbled on a book that was on the floor. And I opened this book, and this book has become my Bible now. This is one of the most powerful books in terms of connecting to one's femininity. And ladies, if you want the name of the book, I'll give it to you at the end of class. But this is such a powerful book about connecting to your female power, giving up the aggressive, kind of more male approach to love, and reconnecting to your femininity and learning to love as a woman. So I was amazed. So like you, right? I was able to attune myself. I was listening, right? I wasn't just thinking, oh, I got this, they're the problem and I'm just the victim. No, I was thinking, wait, what can I learn? What should where can I grow? What can I do better? And I was open to the universe, right? And then the universe will bring you the guidance that you need, right? So I love that, what you said, Rudolph, that to be the flock in general, not just with the beloved, but to be listening, sensitive to the guidance that can come from the outside, and it will come. If you're listening, you will hear. I've noted, I was amazed. It was amazing. I stumbled on that book. It was crazy. Sanchez, go ahead.
Yeah, I just sorry, I got mixed up on my notes. I have so many annotations. That's why I was flipping back and forth. Yeah, the flock. I thought that part was pretty cool because it's changing this one perspective of a person who is like leading, I guess you could say, and then like it's spreading that and becoming more shared, shared by all, in a spiritual sense. It's like you're trying to be more selfless, you're trying to be more remove the ego and open up and to the whole everything around you, in a more harmonious sense.
Excellent. And what I will emphasize what you said. I want to say this. You should memorize what I'm about to say because it's so important. If you're a proud person, you cannot love. There is no room for love if there is pride, right? Before you can truly love, pride has to go, right? And this is something that a lot of us, we try to love and still be proud, right? This is not going to go very far, right? So very nicely put. Donaldson, go ahead.
So in the breakout rooms, I was kind of talking about the poems with a few people, and I mentioned this quote, and Axel made a comment that was like, and then I sort of took all the poems in relation to kind of like Sufism, because I just watched the lecture, and I thought this quote, well, really Axel kind of said it, but like not challenging kind of like established values, like Sufism is challenging traditional Islam, and like that's sort of what I sort of interpreted from this particular quote.
So you mean, so how is it that we're shepherds or that we're the flock? How do you connect to the text?
I think it's a criticism of traditional Islam in that they're kind of interpreting the text to the point where they're looking for information there, whereas Sufism, they're kind of learning from experience and just kind of going with the flow and
Got it.
learning kind of through experience.
I love that, right? Instead of knowing the way, right, or thinking you're the authority, like a scholar of the way, you become the flock. You're learning. You're the learner, you're the student, right? So I love that because in a way, entering love as a student, it takes so much humility to enter a relationship and say to your beloved, I am your student, or I am a student of love. I'm here to learn. I don't know much, right? We tend to want to project that we're experts and that we know, right? And we want to look, you know, like we have expertise and skill, but to enter humbly and to say, I'm here to learn, right? Teach me. This is the most beautiful thing you can say to someone, right? Souvenance, go ahead. You want to say that question, Souvenance? Let's see, you chatted it. Yes, no? Souvenance, we'd love to hear you. Can't you talk?
So I have a sore throat. That's why I just.
Oh, okay. All right. I will respond then. So Souvenance wrote in the chat. She said, "What makes a person a proud person?" Right? Can anyone answer that? Does anybody? Proud person. I think Sanchez said it very nicely. Proud person is someone who, in a way, is not able to. There's no flexibility in pride. So in other words, there's pride versus the humility to change. I think you would put it like that. You can have dignity and you can have, in French, there's a nice distinction, and maybe also in Spanish, between arrogance and pride, right? So arrogance is like, that's a jerk, right? And pride is like a natural dignity that we carry, right? So we say in French, fierté. So that's a good type of pride, right? But this type of pride should always be willing to stoop down, listen, and change. That's what makes the difference, right? I know there's a beautiful, I was just reading this today, so that's why I'm going to mention it, right? We studied Solomon a few weeks ago, or last week, but his father, King David, right, who was one of the most powerful kings of the Hebrew nation, was also the most humble, right? We know this from certain things, the way that he repented, right, from his mistake with Solomon's mother. And out of this repentance came Solomon, right? So there is the sign of true royalty or of true pride, a good pride, is the ability to humble oneself and change course, right? Does that answer your question, Souvenance? Let me see you. Let me see. I'm trying to find your face. Yes, Souvenance, you can wave if I answered your question and I can see you. Okay, hopefully, right? Okay, so that's the difference, right? You can have a high sense of self-worth. That's perfectly fine, right? You can be in a relationship knowing, okay, how do I pin myself? Oh yeah, sorry. I'm struggling with all this. I'm talking to you, high profound thoughts and doing all kinds of manipulations on this Zoom at the same time. I don't know how I'm doing this, right? Where was I? Yes. Okay. So yeah, there's a difference between having a high opinion of yourself, which is very important, right? And at the same time, having the humility to change course when you're required to change, admit that you took a wrong turn, right? That's the sign that you are humble and not proud, right? Fatakov, you can conclude on the flock shepherd thing. Go ahead, Fatakov.
I think also that often we immerse ourselves in our relationships and in our beloved so much that we can't have the ability or the desire to learn from them because we're so immersed in them. And
that's sorry, go ahead.
and all we can see or have the notion of is that there is this other individual whom we really love, but what do we learn from them? And when that happens, and that love becomes all-encompassing, I guess, for that individual, then obviously there is also a barrier to learning, and that is very key to being the flock and not the shepherd, of not trying to lead, but to hear your beloved out and listen actually to what they have to say instead of just going straight into the relationship and just trying to just immerse yourselves in them without any questions or any thoughts about the future and what specifically is it you want to accomplish or achieve.
Okay, very good. Yes, the ability, right, to, if we become too merged with our lover, we can't listen to them anymore because our existence depends on their opinion of us, right?
Yeah.
So we want to be able to be separate, healthily separate, standing on our own, like the woman in the Song of Songs, right? I am my beloved. When you're standing firmly, know who you are, then you can listen. But if you're merged in the beloved and your everything depends on how they see you, you can't have these conversations, right? You can't speak, you can't listen. This is one of the main problems with being merged. You can neither listen nor speak. And this is not good because there is no possibility of movement in that relationship, right? Okay, I want to get everyone, but we need to take a break because I want to go to the next poems in a couple minutes. And I want to finish by 5. So let's have a 3-minute break until exactly 4:15. And then we'll go back to the last 2 poems. Okay, so let's do that now. And I'll see you in exactly 3 minutes. So let me see.